It's very hard to speak of African anything without drastically oversimplifying its diverse creations and beliefs within the people of Africa. What may be known to many as Greek mythology, Norse gods, and similar, many people have no idea that some can be traced back to Africa. African history is rich with religious, spirituality, and culture that creates a dynamic web of old and new existence. A group of cosplay individuals is going to take you through a journey and bring exposure to African deities. The real story starts now. A group of cosplay individuals got together and visually represented African deities, bringing them to life. With a blend of creativity, vivid colors, and masterful interpretation, it leaves you in a state of wow and takes you to a place of wanting to know more. We caught up with aka King Kurt and asked, what do you hope that an event like this will achieve?
It's interesting that all my life, whether it be comic books, movies, or television, I could name you most of the Greek gods. I can even name you some Norse gods. But when I started researching African mythology, I realized I had no clue as to who these people were, what their stories were, and how they played into all the world's mythologies. Because all the world's mythologies has a common theme, but we are never taught about the African mythology. So to be able to come together and collaborate with Demetrius on this event, it was imperative, it's integral, because it matches our mission statement. Our mission statement at Head Nerds in Charge is the proliferation and promotion of Black creators, because we are lacking in this space. So to be able to get so many creators in one spot, representing something so special, and this is the first time Juneteenth is a national holiday, baby, it's the only place we could be. This is our thing. This is what we do. This is why we get up in the morning. That's why we go and do our show every single solitary week, to make sure that people are aware that we're out here. And look at the representation. You see African garbs, goddesses represented in a park. And all you see is kids turning their heads, asking their parents. And whether they're white, black, or indifferent, they're asking questions. And that's what's the most important thing. That's the thing about representation. It makes you ask questions. Who's that? Because trust and believe me, if somebody came in here dressed up as Thor, the first thing they say, ooh, there go Thor. They know who that is, automatically. But if somebody comes in as Shango, or Ra, or Set, nobody has a clue. And that's where we're trying to tip the scales and make sure that there's a balance.
Let's start by exploring a very popular and feared god among the Yoruba pantheon of gods, called the god of iron and war. He is known as Ogun, for his creativity alongside his destructive nature, which amounts to the misunderstood nature of his aura. Ogun is the master craftsman and artist, farmer, warrior, essence of destruction and creativity, a recluse and a gregarious imbiber, a reluctant leader of men and deities. The myth and legend of Ogun's origin begin with his descent to earth and through his connection with the element iron. He is the most revered and feared due to his quick temper. Ogun is a misunderstood god in the Yoruba pantheon of gods, yet he is the most traveled and worshipped god of the Yoruba belief system.
My name is Richard Sutton. I am portraying Ogun, the god of industry. He's a warrior and the god of iron, and much like him, I'm a personal trainer that lifts iron all day, and I'm a former United States Army soldier. That god not only is an army soldier or a warrior in African culture, but in voodoo and in all cultures in the Caribbean.
We sat down with Demetrius Holt, the mastermind behind the event, to understand the motivation and purpose of his cause.
My name is Demetrius Holt. My cosplay name is Hellspawn Cosplay, and I am Kratos, the god of war. If I was to help usher in a new era of people being aware of African gods and Caribbean and Yoruba and Egyptian, the best lead-in would be Kratos, because that's what he's been doing for the last 20 years. So, in my mind, having them face me and be the enemy for them would help bring a lot of people together. Back in 2006, my grandmother, Lottie Mae McGill, down in Polk City, Florida, she was the founder of the Juneteenth celebration for that city. And, you know, we were down there, my parents, who are here now, we were all down there to help support and celebrate Juneteenth, you know, for my grandmother. And when I found myself in a position to gather a lot of people together to look as beautiful as possible, to have as much fun as possible, to give them an opportunity to get their names out there, to get their brands out there, I took it. It was, I think it was December of 2020 when I decided to do this. And it's sort of like a legacy thing. You know, if my grandmother put something together and I'm in a position to do that as well, why not? You know, and it was kismet. It was lightning in a bottle that this was the year that it became a national holiday. So, you know, a lot of people might think, oh, he's doing this for clout, he's doing this for recognition, but this is 7 months in the making. So again, this is something that is just special on its own. There are so many different types of African deities that nobody has a clue about them. You know, case in point, Record of Ragnarok just released on Netflix yesterday. It's about a whole bunch of different gods from all different types of cultures, and not one of them is an African one. Not one of them represents the diaspora. So, in my mind, if representation is supposed to be important, then we need to put us in the forefront more so than what's already known and what's common. That's why representation matters.
Growing up and over my course of my whole life, I've had this feeling that if it was related to Africa in any way, in the African culture, and I say African culture when there's so many of them, but in general, if it had something to do with black people, people just discounted it. They didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want to see it. They were more interested in Roman Greek gods. They were interested in, you know, Caucasian aspects of things. And so I think it's just a disregard of black culture. It's a disregard of black people. We see that daily in how black bodies are treated. You know, black women, they're dying at high rates in childbirth. You know, you go to the hospital and you say, hey, I have this problem, you're disregarded. So if they're going to disregard you on a level of your health and safety, of course they're going to disregard you in terms of like the original religions of the world. You know what I mean? That come from black people. They don't want to hear or see from black people. They want to say this is where things started. You know, you'll see that with Cleopatra. Who was that? Elizabeth Taylor? She played Cleopatra. Like, that's weird. Like, when I look at it, I used to watch those movies when I was a kid. Like, I used to look at it like, oh, that's normal. But now that I'm as an adult, it looks stupid. It looks really kind of stupid to have like a Caucasian person like play like Cleopatra or play like some somebody that you know is African. Like, it doesn't make sense. So it's just a blatant disregard of anything that's black, anything that says black excellence. To me, like, the orishas and, you know, African deities really speak to black excellence. It's black people at their top level. We have superpowers, you know what I mean? Like, we control seas and rivers and land and you know, provide sustenance for people, you know what I mean? So to me, it's a blatant disregard. That's the reason why. That's the core.
Underrepresentation and lack of understanding in the mainstream media seems to be a common thread among those we spoke with. It's believed among many African Americans, the ideas, culture, and teaching of African mythology is replaced by other cultural teachings. We asked why is the representation that is presented by mainstream media does not reflect African gods and goddesses.
Black divinity is automatically looked at as bad. Voodoo, black magic. Everything black and magic is automatically evil. So when it's Norse gods running around, Odin, Thor, they can run around and do all kinds of crazy stuff, but they're the Norse gods. That's what they do. When you're talking about Zeus and Athena and all of them, they can do whatever they want to do, but it's not seen in a negative light. As a matter of fact, it's fodder for mainstream entertainment. The show American Gods is a prime example of that. But the representation of African gods has always been demonized. African spirituality has always been demonized. And it's one of the things why people don't really touch on it, because they don't think mainstream television, movies, etc. will be as accepting of it as it has been with other mythologies. Prime example, Anansi being cut off of American Gods. Anansi was one of the few African gods that we actually were familiar with, Mr. Nancy. And they cut him out of that one program that's about gods because they felt like he wasn't integral to the storyline. But it was one of the few people representing us. And that's why we're here now.
We're just not what people want to see. We are not what people want to believe they came from. We are not what people want to believe, or they don't want to know where their religions came from. The fact that most of them came from brown people is of irrelevance to them, and it's not something they want to acknowledge. And so I think that is why there's a lack of representation in color. There's a lack of representation in African mythology, the mythology of people of color in general, that people don't want to know about it.
They don't want that truth to be known. They still want to be the predominant people. So their images, their beliefs, all that needs to be the forefront of what is acceptable with spiritual practice. So that's why West African practices, especially like Vodun and Voodoo, they call it witchcraft. They demonize it so that you're not encouraged to do your research and do what your ancestors did.
Fear, misrepresentation. For example, when you look at American Horror Stories Coven, right? And I know they definitely got some advice from some people who actually practice African spirituality. But the way they portrayed Papa Legba, they portrayed him as sniffing coke. They portrayed Marie Laveau as killing babies and things of that nature. That's not what we do as African practitioners. That's not what happens in African spirituality. So when you have that, when you have those movies, those old movies that you always had the voodoo man, the witch doctor, doing something negative, this is where fear comes into play.
There is no debate that society has made positive steps towards equality, race issues, and inclusiveness, but the question must be asked, has there been enough done to overcome what has been ingrained in a dominant culture with a past that has depicted blacks as partial human and irrelevant? Can the perception be changed regarding the African mythology after it has been presented as dark, evil, and demonized? Can more representation greatly help to alter the perception and understanding of African gods and goddesses and the impact they had in the establishment of other mythologies such as Norse and Greek god? We asked, What would be the impact of more representation?
I think it's very important when you see yourself represented on television, media, success stories, and in your everyday life. Doctors, lawyers, carpenters, heads of households. You want to see people who look like you. That gives you a voice, that gives you strength, that shows you that you can succeed and that you can be powerful. And when you see people who look like you, that means you can do it too. Specifically representing this cultural event that's happening, I think it's good to always look back. It's important to know what happened before you so that you know where you're going. So as far as representation goes on the media, not only with Egyptian gods or Greek gods, West African gods, Southeast Asian, I mean, everyone needs to be represented. Native American, I think that we have such a beautifully diverse world that does not only include Caucasian individuals. The world is actually brown. The world is actually brown. From Southeast Asia, Australia, everywhere you go, there's more brown people in the world. That's just a fact. So it's very interesting to me that when you go on the media throughout the world, it's very much whitewashed. But I think that now, more than ever, it's a beautiful time to show how beautiful Black and brown culture, faces, lineage, history can be.
Representation matters. It matters in education. It matters in media or what have you. So yeah, it's been past time for kids to see different deities that look like them and understand where they derive from.
We want to see us being represented. We want to see us being a part of everything, whether it's, in front of the camera where we're being represented on screen, like for instance, I know people have brought up like Black Panther where that was fictional, but we want to see that representation of us not strictly being stereotyped. We don't want to be the drug dealer or the person or the woman that sleeps her way to the top. We want to be those everyday people that are making a difference in the world, and that's super important that we see that in every hue of color, and we see that in a way that represents who we are at the core. Not, oh well, you're this, but let's kind of whitewash that a bit, or we're going to take that idea or that smidge of your ancestry, but then we're going to Americanize it as much as we can. And I think that's super important that those of us who are everyday people get out there and spread that word that, hey, this is what I do, this is what I'm great at, this is what I'm a professional at, whether it's in front of the camera, behind the camera, the creative side, the design teams. We need more of that everywhere.
Most people would recognize Norse and Greek gods and goddesses such as Thor, Loki, Odin, Zeus, Poseidon, Athena, Artemis, as they have been taught in our education systems, branded in kids' toys, and are key features in major movies. It's unfortunate that very limited people could recognize or even know of African gods and goddesses and the strong parallels to the well-known Norse and Greek mythology. Here are some examples.
And then, you see different TV shows like Hercules and things of that nature, different things that talk about Greek mythology, what have you. And as I've gotten older, I realized that they, like the Aphrodite, that came from Oshun, Zeus, a lot of that came from Orunmila and Obatala. So when you have that knowledge and understanding of which one came first, a lot of the ancient mystery schools were burned down by the Greeks and the Romans. It was stolen history. So when you have that history and that practice that's hidden from you, like these are things that they would kill the enslaved off of.
There are many more African gods and goddesses that has a remarkable resemblance with Norse, Greek and other well-known mythologies. As depicted in the comparison visual between Shango versus Thor, Ocean versus Aphrodite and Odin versus Set, one might wonder how much influence the African mythologies had on the creation and belief of other mythologies. This amazing event brought people and the cosplay community together was very successful. What do you hope the impact and benefits of an event like this will offer to others?
Hopefully, this will inspire someone. Inspiration is a powerful thing. When you see something that looks like you and is shown to you in a positive light, just the same as those little kids running around with Captain America's shield, they run around and now they want to become engineers because Tony Stark made his own robotic armor. They want to be professors and teachers and things because most of the superheroes are genius level intellect. Remember when Black Panther came out in the movies? Remember that fervor, that anticipation, that excitement that kids had? They had a black superhero. Black Panther had been there since the 60s. He'd been readily available since the 60s. We didn't know. Or at least if you were a black nerd, you knew, but mainstream didn't know. And that's one of the things that we're here to educate, that there are other stories, there are other mythologies. We do have a culture. The problem with being a product of the black diaspora is the fact that our stories, our roots, our tales were taken from us when we were taken from Africa. So we're bringing those stories back. No, we might not have the original stories as told as when we were there, but we can take those same stories and we can showcase them and highlight them and show that there is roots here. And we, the children from enslaved Africans, and we can represent that today and put it in a positive light and inspire the next generation to learn, to build, and to create from that foundation.
When you look at it, we know about Greek mythology, we know about Hindu, Indian, Native American, Norse. We don't know a lot about African mythology, other than the brief stint in the Bible where Moses got the slaves out of Egypt. That's pretty much all you hear about. So it's nice being able to bring awareness and knowledge of something that most people don't know about.
I didn't realize how rich it was and how beautiful it was and how there were so many people out there. And it's been a really beautiful thing to see it and to be around it. I find it really great today because there's so many little kids out here and there's so many families, and these little kids are seeing all these beautiful grown black people just dressed up and enjoying themselves.
Doing something like this today, once these pictures go out and even these videos go out, it'll bring awareness to these gods and goddesses of the continent of Africa. And hopefully bring more awareness so that the younger generation will take heed and want to study more about those, about those gods and goddesses.
We want to normalize seeing Black power and divinity and characters that aren't part of negative stereotypes. That's the hope.
It was June 19, 1865, when enslaved African Americans in Texas were told they were free. A little over 150 years later, Juneteenth, also referred to as Jubilee Day, Emancipation Day, Freedom Day, and Black Independence Day, was made a national federal holiday commemorating emancipation of enslaved African American. This event was also a celebration for that recognition. We ask about the importance of the alignment with Juneteenth and what does it mean to you?
Juneteenth becoming a national holiday is one of such a great importance to everyone, even though, yes, we were asking for inequality and a sense of ending police brutality. But acknowledging this small step gives us the chance to keep going, and especially pushing it as a federal holiday means across the board, everybody then has to acknowledge that it exists and then can therefore acknowledge the problem still exists as well.
We do have history, we do have culture, we do have myths that are linked to our legacy as Black people. So this is our chance to reclaim that. This is our chance to put us at the forefront and let you know we can be just as beautiful and powerful and seductive and all of those things as all the things that we see in mainstream media all the time. Juneteenth is, that's our Independence Day. I haven't celebrated July 4th in a solid decade. So only Independence Day I rep is the movie with Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum. But when it comes to our actual Emancipation Day, that was on June 19th, 1865. That's our actual Freedom Day. So July 4th, 1776, my ancestors, if we was even here, we weren't considered people at all, let alone citizens. So it's not applicable. So all of that just culminated into this beautiful communal thing. Beautiful Black people everywhere. I love it.
I've talked about this on our show time and time again. I am a firm believer I am appreciative of the acknowledgement of what happened in 1865, the fact that we were still enslaved, despite the fact that America had its independence almost 100 years prior. But this, to me, is a pacifier. Because until you bring up legislation talking about reparations, until you bring up legislation that makes Black hate crimes punishable by federal law, until we stop police brutality, a holiday is nice, acknowledgement is nice, but real reform is what we're looking for. See, there can be no healing without repair. That's the reason the word reparations holds so much weight to us. Ironically, slave owners received reparations when slavery ended for the loss of property. Us. Yet, the idea of reparations to the children of those enslaved people seems to be this taboo subject. Until we have something definitive that says that the United States government not only acknowledges what happened, but here are the steps that we're outlining to repair it, then this is nothing more than a nice holiday that we can acknowledge that they knew they were wrong. Now, what are your next steps? Because this should not be the be-all, end-all. It should be the precursor to what comes next. Good. You acknowledge this? Acknowledge Tulsa. Acknowledge Rosewood. Acknowledge MOVE in my lifetime, the MOVE bombing. I'm from Philadelphia. Acknowledge those things and start to make the repairs necessary for us to actually feel like Americans. Because until then, I'm just an African that's a prisoner of war.